$10 million Bitcoin is a price that Hal Finney, Adam Back, and Jesse Myers have all come to. They've come to this point from slightly different places, but the price is the same among all of them. We're going to be going over how they got to that price and why it might actually be somewhat bearish. Once I had started heading down the Bitcoin rabbit hole for about a month, and I started to see what the world's best money ever could mean for all of humanity, I started to wonder, what could Bitcoin's price really look like on a truly hyper-Bitcoinized world? And it is a question that is extremely difficult to find an answer to. In this recent video, I tried to answer that question, and I got my math wrong. Today, I'm going to go back to the drawing board and rely on people far smarter than myself. Hal Finney, Adam Back, and Jesse Myers. We're going to start there with Jesse Myers. From what I understand, Jesse grew up in a house that deals with data. If you grew up in the household of a carpenter or a painter or a musician, you would see the world through those respective lenses. Jesse sees the world and cannot help seeing the world, from what I understand, through the lens of data, analyzing things. And that is why when I see things posted by Jesse, I go, my ears perk up a little bit more than they otherwise might. So with that in mind, let's dive into this. This thread, and we're not going to be going through the whole thing, is titled Bitcoin's Full Potential. How much could Bitcoin really be worth? Jumping all the way down to about the midpoint, he's talking about the global asset landscape. And this is something that I have desperately tried to find an answer to. How much money, how much total money is in the entire world, in all things, everything, in bank accounts, in homes, in gold, in all of it? How much is there? And I am not the only person that has struggled with finding an answer to this. Incredibly, there doesn't seem to be a simple high-level view of this anywhere. I'm not a data guy, and I struggled to find it, and here Jesse is also struggling to find an answer, but this is the best that he's been able to find. I imagine you've seen this chart. We've got Bitcoin over here at a measly 400 billion, while we've got all these other things, art, 18 trillion, equities, 115 trillion, bonds, 300 trillion, and some others. This undoubtedly overstates some categories and understates others, and may be missing some pieces altogether. Point is, this is a rough picture of all the world's value. It's something like 900 trillion in total. Currently, the world's collective allocation to Bitcoin is just 0.05%. 0.4 trillion out of 900 trillion. Bitcoin enthusiasts often make the mistake of concluding that Bitcoin's potential valuation is infinite. This is true in dollar terms, since there is no limit to the amount of dollar debasement that can occur into the future, see Weimar Germany or recent Zimbabwe. But it is unrealistic in terms relative to other assets. Even if Bitcoin is the best asset out there, it is foolish to expect that everyone will eventually decide to be 100% Bitcoin. But it is also unrealistic to expect that Bitcoin will remain a 0.05 allocation on the world's balance sheet. Overall, my personal assessment of where the ceiling is for Bitcoin is simple. It's very high. Almost to the point that I'm embarrassed to show my analysis. My conservative estimates suggest an outrageous full potential for Bitcoin's price, 10 million per Bitcoin in today's dollars. This is Adam Back, the gentleman that came up with proof of work. Early this year, I was curious of the claim, quote, Bitcoin's 2x per year on average, end quote. The decade January 2013 to December 2022, Bitcoin went up 2.036 times per year, meaning 1,200% in a decade. If that continues, we'll cross 10 million, that's Jesse's number as well, $10 million Bitcoin, and 200 million, there's that number again, 200 trillion market cap by the end of the next 2 halvings. Here's Hal Finney's famous quote. As an amusing thought experiment, imagine that Bitcoin is successful and becomes the dominant payment system in use throughout the world. Then the total value of the currency should be equal to the total value of all the wealth in the world. Current estimates of total worldwide household wealth that I have found range from 100 trillion to 300 trillion. With 20 million coins, that gives each coin a value of about 10 million. So here we've got Jesse Myers coming to $10 million coin, we've got Adam Back coming to 10 million per coin, and we've got Hal Finney all the way back in 2009 talking about $10 million per Bitcoin. Let's revisit this. Jesse says, you can run your own numbers here for the Bitcoin capture column and see what you come up with. Ladies and gentlemen, this train that you are now boarding rides on pure opium. So buy yourself some tickets, get some popcorn, and settle in because this might get bumpy. Let's start here with gold. I think that Bitcoin will capture only 10% of gold, not 50%. Why? Because gold has deep cultural roots. There are reasons people would like to have gold, and I think if the price of gold dropped as people got out of gold for a store of value reason and into Bitcoin for that same reason, then more people would use gold for either jewelry, art, for creative reasons. That means that instead of what Jesse has here at 6 trillion, I think it is only 1.2 trillion. Now, on the other hand, when it comes to cars and collectibles and people trading cards, Pokemon cards, that kind of thing, it doesn't make sense to have a whole garage full of collectible high-end cars when you've got to pay the maintenance fees on them, when you could rather have it in Bitcoin. So that's why I come up with 50% of that market. The reason I have fine art so much higher is because I don't think that people will be getting a bunch of fine art, multiple Monets, Rembrandts, Picassos, to store their value. If you securely store your seed words on something like the stamp seed, then you don't have to worry about water damage or fire damage or a thief rolling it up and tucking it into their backpack. That can't happen with your seed words. Now, when it comes to the stock market, that one's a little bit tricky. Jesse has his at 15%, but I'm going to bump that all the way up to 30%, double it, because there's so much that goes into the stock market. The reason I think that Bitcoin captures 30% as opposed to 15% is because it seems to me that a lot of people, especially people in my generation, are kind of YOLOing into the stock market. YOLOing into really anything isn't such a hot idea. This Bitcoin thing, I actually do understand. That seems like a much better deal, a much better idea than just hoping that company XYZ does well on my Robinhood account. Not to mention the massive players in the space, Vanguard, BlackRock, Fidelity going, this whole Bitcoin thing is a much better idea than investing in various companies. And those companies, much like MicroStrategy is already doing, might also get on Bitcoin. Jesse has Bitcoin capturing 15% of real estate's 330 trillion, whereas I have it at 60%. This is pure anecdote, but I do know a handful of people that manage properties. They have a few properties, and it's not something that they're doing because they just love it so much and they love dealing with tenants and they just, oh, that's so great, having to go and make sure that the rent is paid on time and making sure that everything's working with this in the maintenance and the landscaping and the taxes to pay on these different products. I just love that so much. No, but when those same people go, hang on a second, Bitcoin is an even better store of value, and I don't like dealing with the maintenance and the taxes and the tenants, then maybe I sell off some of those buildings, some of those complexes, some of those places, and put it into Bitcoin. That is why I think, and we're still on that hopium train headed into the land of pure imagination, that Bitcoin captures 60% of 330 trillion in the real estate market, not just 15%. And the reason I put money so much higher, not 30%, but 75%, is because if the world at large is on a Bitcoin standard, and that is what most all of the countries are using across the globe, then it wouldn't just be 30%, it'd be 75%, maybe even higher. Okay, let's get off the imagination train. Let's return back to some semblance of reality. Let's return to the more sane minds in the room. Jesse Myers, Adam Back, and Hal Finney. They all come to the same price point of $10 million. That is what they have concluded. If 10 million Bitcoin isn't quite hopium, crazy train to imagination land for you, you are more than welcome to buy a ticket to this wacky land where we get to a market cap of 455 trillion. You can see how Jesse gets to his market cap of 200 trillion with all these columns here, the various prices, how he allocates Bitcoin's full potential here. That's how he got there. You can see in my chart how I get there. I just went over all of this. What does this mean? On Jesse's prediction, on his chart here, he's got 10 million per Bitcoin. But my numbers are a little bit different. I ran the calculations. I figured out this is what I suspect. This is just my total imagination land here, which gets us to that 455.7 trillion, which means that 455 trillion divided by 17 million coins, not 20. The reason I'm doing 17 is because based off of estimates I've seen, roughly 20% are lost. So I'm just going with 17 million there, which gets us to a price per coin of $26,764,705. What do you think each of these markets Bitcoin could capture? What percentage of gold, car and collectibles, fine art, the stock market, real estate, bonds, money? If you think my numbers are super high, then adjust them accordingly. If you think they're low, then raise them accordingly. Come up with your number, see what you get. Now, it's pretty simple to say that my number is crazy, wacky talk. Okay, fine, let's just chuck that one. Let's just get rid of that one real quick. Now, let's also say that Adam Back, Hal Finney, and Jesse Myers, they're all completely wrong. They're wrong by a factor of, let's say, 10. That still leaves us with $1 million Bitcoin. You've seen the numbers. You've seen Jesse's numbers. You've seen my imagination Willy Wonka land numbers. The point is this. As so many people have said time and time again, the only allocation that is a mistaken allocation is 0%. This is the most asymmetrical trade maybe in human history. So having more than 0 might be a good idea.